idea is Kurt is here from Honduras just for a couple days, really enjoying the snowy weather. I'm missing the 80-degree weather, but he can enjoy the 30-degree weather here. And just wanted to give you a little update about kind of what's going on in Honduras in the context of the Honduran situation. Honduras has been in the news a lot lately, not necessarily for great things, but wanted to give you a little insight into that, and also some exciting opportunities that ASJ-US is involved in and some initiatives with that. So I'm just going to introduce Kurt here for a second. So for those of you who don't know, this is Kurt Ver Beek. He's the founder, one of the founders of ASJ-US in Honduras. ASJ-US was started in Honduras first in 1998. So when I was there in January, along with the ASJ-US Board of Directors, we were able to celebrate the 15th year anniversary of ASJ-US Honduras. And so that was quite an event, and I think we'll have some pictures for you to see from that in a second. And Kurt started the organization a little bit because he was teaching students about development, international development. What can we do to help poor countries? And as he was going through the classes, he noticed, and Joanne, his wife, noticed that there was a gap in Christian organizations working on macro issues, structural issues, corruption, violence, debt, and felt a calling to do something about that, to start an organization focused on justice. And so that's what he did with a number of Honduran friends. And now we have ASJ-US, and you'll get to hear a little bit more about that in a second. But Kurt's full-time job is actually for Calvin, so most of his time right now is up here is spent doing Calvin activities these couple days. But we're very glad that he can talk a little bit about ASJ-US's work tonight as well. So here's Kurt Ver Beek.
How about we pray before? I don't think I got this one right, so keeps popping off my ear. Let's pray a minute. Dear God, we pray tonight for Honduras, for the people who are suffering, and also for ASJ-US, for all the people who are praying and supporting it, and for the work that we're doing. And we pray that you will help all of us to have open hearts and minds tonight, and to see how we can be a part of healing and transforming Honduras. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, Jill. I did chapel this morning, and I was kind of a mess. I cried quite a bit. So I think I'm in better shape tonight. So I hope I will be able to pull this off well. So thank you all for coming. Joanne and I have lived in Honduras for most of the last 26 years. And in many ways, this has been the hardest year. I mean, I have a hard time saying hardest because 2006, one of our lawyers was killed. And that was awful. But as far as just the situation in Honduras and living in Honduras, this has been a very hard year. And at the same time, it has been a very good year for ASJ-US and for the work. And there's reasons that those two are both happening at the same time, but it's also uncomfortable and makes me uneasy. Like, you want to celebrate the good things that are happening at ASJ-US and at the same time mourn for what's going on in the country. So tonight I want to talk about both of those things. And I love Honduras. I don't even want anybody to ask me the question, like, do you love the country you were born in more than the country you live in now? It's better you don't ask me. But I love Honduras. Honduras, it's a beautiful country. The oceans, the Copan ruins, the beaches, I mean, any you want to come and visit, we can send you to wonderful places in Honduras. The mountains. I love working for Calvin. I love teaching students. I love bringing students and showing them all over Honduras. Most of all, I love the Honduran people. Of all of the Central Americans, they seem to me to have the best sense of humor. They love to tease, and I love to tease. So that works out very well. They're humble, they're open, just great people. So when I think about Honduras, it's about all of the things that I love, the beauty of Honduras, of the people. But that is not why Honduras is in the news right now. And honestly, I barely recognize the Honduras in the news. It's like when I first moved to Chicago with my family, I was 5. But my mom and dad moved to Chicago. Actually, okay, this is even better. We lived in Holland, Michigan, and my dad took a job in South Holland, Illinois. So if any of you know South Holland, far south side, the suburbs, the onion set capital of the world. So my aunts and uncles and grandparents wouldn't visit us the first few years we lived there because it was too dangerous. We were too close to Chicago. This was in 1969. I mean, that's often, that thinking about Chicago is what, when people talk about Honduras, how I feel about Honduras, like, it isn't my reality. But now Honduras is known for other things. Honduras is known for drug trafficking. If you see on these two maps, I think they're very fascinating. The map on the left is from 2007, and it's the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, tracking suspected drug shipment flights from Colombia-Venezuela border to the Caribbean, almost all to Dominican Republic. And you can see very few flights going to Central America and very few to Honduras, and almost all of them going to the Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Jamaica all had major crackdowns on drug trafficking 2007, 2008. And you can see from the map in 2011 where all those flights went. So the whole drug industry shifted from the Caribbean and almost all to Honduras, 2008, 2009, 2010. Honduras is also in the news for being the first country in Latin America in years for having a coup. 2009, the Honduran elite put the Honduran president on a plane, Sunday morning, 5 a.m., military knocked down the door of his house, put him in a truck, took him to the airport, and shipped him to Costa Rica. And for years, I had known a Honduras with very little political division between rich and poor, between left and right. Since the coup, it has split open the country. There's people in churches who don't talk to each other because they're pro-coup or anti-coup. Families, brothers, who don't talk to each other because they differ on their position on the coup. And many of us, myself included, thought that the Honduran elite had learned their lesson. The consequences of this coup economically, politically for the country were huge. But just in December, the Congress fired 4 of the 15 Supreme Court members. I mean, imagine the U.S. Congress firing Supreme Court justices here in the U.S. I mean, it's illegal. You can barely imagine it happening. Well, it's equally illegal in Honduras, but the Congress did it. They fired 4 Supreme Court justices. And it's going to be a long legal battle. They're going to bring it to international courts. And 2 to 3 years from now, the Honduran government will be condemned for having taken illegal action. They will have to pay huge fines to those Supreme Court justices who were fined. But 2 or 3 years from now, the whole problem, the reason that they were fired, will have gone away. Not a good year. And lastly, and probably most disturbingly, Honduras is now infamous for violence. 2011, Honduras was rated as the highest homicide rate in the world, nearly 90 homicides per 100,000. You can see the comparisons there to Iraq, to Mexico. So everyone's talking about the Mexican homicide rate. It's around 30 per 100,000. In Honduras is about 90. Nearly all of those homicides are young Honduran men. About 90% of them are Honduran men between 18 and 29. So all sorts of Honduran families of mothers and fathers are losing their young sons every day. Some of them involved in drug trafficking, involved in gangs, others because they don't want to get involved in drug trafficking and don't want to get involved in gangs. Doing okay. So it's been a hard year for Honduras. Honduras is hurting, my friends are hurting, my neighbors are hurting, and I am hurting. So we at ASJ-US have tried to be on the front line of these situations. And here's our mission statement. We are a group trying to be brave Christians, dedicated to making the Honduran system of laws and government work properly and do justice for the poor and inspire other Christians to do the same. So many of you have heard this before, but for some of you who haven't, just highlight quickly 3 things. First of all, this brave Christians. And it seems to me very messed up that when we talk about Christians around the world, brave is often not even the first 20 adjectives that you think of to describe Christians. But when you look at the prophets, when you look at the life of Jesus, when you look at the life of the early apostles, clearly very brave people. So somehow we are trying to help ourselves and other Christians to reclaim that title, that adjective of brave, and that we as Christians should be brave. To making the Honduran system of law and government work, we'll talk about that more in a minute, especially for the poor, for the marginalized. Oftentimes, the government does work for the middle class and for the rich, but not so much for the poor. Here's a quote by Nick Waltersdorf, known to some of you. The implicit assumption in everything ASJ-US does is the task of government to establish justice in society by instituting a system of just laws, enforcing those laws, and by securing justice when laws are violated. So just in that first sentence, you see that this has been a hard year for Honduras and for ASJ-US. That it is the task of government to establish justice by instituting and enforcing a system of laws. I mean, from firing Supreme Court justices to having police and prosecutors and judges who are involved, being paid off by drug traffickers, or fearful of to the law because of that. And what ASJ-US does is 3 things. It stands alongside of the victims to defend their cause, does not try to execute an end run around the government, nor does it content itself with dispensing aid and charity to victims, and it holds government responsible. And third, it does not content itself with issuing denunciations, but assists the government in carrying out its tasks. And what I want to emphasize here is that oftentimes, and we're going to talk about education in a minute, and when you look at the problems in any country, in Honduras or other place, it's often tempting, like, oh, these kids need a good education. Well, let's build them another school. Or the healthcare system is broken. Let's build a private clinic. But when you're talking about the justice system of a country, it isn't an option to build a parallel justice system. We can't have a parallel police force. We can't have a parallel court system. You have to make the justice system work. And that's what we've been trying to do. So here's just a few examples of some of our successes this year. In land rights, one of our projects, we were able to get 6,180 titles out to poor families. In our youth and family work, 204 young people are in mentoring clubs, meeting weekly or twice a week with mentors. We have 3 criteria. Well, I'll just tell you this. I asked one of our people who runs one of these clubs, I said, Agustina, how do you pick the kids in your club? Like, how do you make sure they're really the ones who need it? She said, oh, that's easy. I just go around and find the kids who are on the corner smoking pot, ask them if they want to join a club. That's pretty good methodology. In our violence and peace and justice work, 67 victims are receiving psychological counseling. Some of you know this project. When we started in 2005, there was 48 homicides in our neighborhood. Last year, there was 7. It was our all-time low. So while the homicide rate in the country has tripled, the homicide rate in this neighborhood, in our neighborhood, went down from 47 to 7. And it's like amazing. And corruption, we have 116 cases of corruption, which we are now bringing legal charges against the people responsible and pushing forward the investigations. So that's just a few little highlights. Could talk for an hour or so about each of those. But I want to talk a little bit more about one thing, probably the thing we're most excited about right now at ASJ-US. And that's the work that we're doing in education. So first the bad news, then the good news. And it's really quite good news. About 3 years ago, we got together a group of organizations and we called ourselves a new alliance. We called it Transformemos Honduras, or Let's Transform Honduras. And it's world vision and compassion and the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church, 14, I think, different organizations. And we started meeting every week. Like, we got to figure out what to do about health and education. Let's just focus on those two things. And somebody had a good idea. They said, before we know how to fix something, we got to know what's broken. So let's start doing some investigations. And I think we knew that stuff in education was messed up, but we didn't know how badly it was messed up until we started to investigate. The first 2 facts I will tell you, and I'll say them, I'm going to emphasize them because I want you to all catch them. First of all, we found that Honduras spends the highest percentage of their budget of any country in Latin America on education. Honduras spends 28% of their national budget on education. I mean, I wouldn't have believed it. I had to keep checking the numbers. 28% of the national budget on education, highest in all of Latin America. But Honduras has the second worst test scores in all of Latin America, just above Haiti, who is the lowest spending country on education in all of the Americas. Completely disconnected. The amount of resources that the Honduran government is investing, or in this case, spending on education versus the results. So obviously there is a very serious problem. And then we started to look deeper. The next thing we found was in our own study that by law, Honduran students are supposed to get 200 days of school, at least 200 days of school. On average, over the last 5 years, they'd gotten 128. It was one year they only got 96. I'll skip that. There was no textbooks in the classrooms. Almost a quarter of the teachers were getting illegal bonuses. They were getting paid for a master's degree they didn't have. They were getting paid for working in a high-risk area when they weren't. And the hiring practices had been completely corrupted. Almost all teachers were hired because they had a connection either to the union leader or to the congressman in their district. And the last thing I want to tell, and I'll explain, if you have questions about any of the rest, I can explain it later. But I'll just go into some detail about this one thing. 26% of the teachers who are on the payroll were not in the classroom. So imagine a school with 100 teachers on the payroll. Only 74 are actually there. Only 74 show up for work. But we found another 14 who were teaching but not on the payroll. Anybody have an idea why a Honduran teacher would be teaching if they weren't on the payroll? Not only a few, 14 out of every 100. Any ideas? But they weren't getting paid for this one. So they were teaching, but not on the payroll. That would be nice. Wasn't true. Nope. Okay, now their teachers were renting out their positions. So 26% were on the payroll but not showing up. But then there's 14% who are showing up and not on the payroll. So let's say I have a master's degree and 14 years of experience. I'm making in Honduras about $2,000 a month per teaching job. Let's say I have 3 jobs. I'm making now $6,000 a month. I can hire, may not even be a teacher, but let's say a recent grad teacher who's my nephew or niece to fill all 3 of those jobs. I pay them $400 a month. I can pay $1,200 a month, make $6,000, and not do a bit of work. So they were renting out their positions. They had a position, highly paid. I mean, the government was paying someone with a master's and 14 years of experience, and sometimes getting a mechanic to teach the classes. So you have 26% of people, and the other 12% who aren't showing up at all, maybe the niece of a congressman, the girlfriend of a union leader, and they have good enough connections they don't even have to show up at all. The other ones hire somebody else to fill their roles. Does that all make sense? I mean, well, so we found all this stuff out. We found all of this stuff out, and I want to just talk a minute for what the effect of this. Imagine, and for me it makes more sense at high school. Imagine that you're in high school and you're a freshman. What do freshmen take? Algebra, right? And then sophomores, geometry? Okay, so you're a freshman and you're taking algebra, but you only get 110 days of school that year instead of 200. You got half of the algebra you should have gotten. But now, when you go to your sophomore year, what should your geometry teacher do? Should she reteach that half of the algebra you didn't get, or should you start in on geometry? And that year, you're also only going to get half of your geometry, so then you go to Algebra 2 your junior year, but you've only gotten half of Algebra 1, and imagine the cumulative effect of this from kindergarten, from first grade, who never learned addition and subtraction well. And then when do you learn multiplication? 3rd grade or something? And you only get half of your multiplication classes. I mean, the cumulative effect of 126 days, it's a mess. And then 26% of the teachers don't even show up. So oversized classes, but then when you get high school, what happens if the geometry teacher is one of the ones who doesn't show up? Who's going to cover them? Like one of the Spanish teachers? And you see the effect on this on children is huge. It's not just a corruption problem. It's condemning the future generations of Honduran kids. 3 million. So we found all this stuff out, and then what do? Right? Basically, we're like, I think we have to do like a press conference. We have to let people know. We have to get this out in the public that teachers aren't showing up for work, that there's no textbooks, that this was not things people knew, that 26% weren't showing up, that 14% were renting out their... But the teachers' union, much like in the US, is the most powerful union in the country. There's often rumors about teachers' union like hiring hitmen and ruining political careers. So here we were in a meeting on a Tuesday morning, 7:30 in the morning, and we showed World Vision and the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church and the Protestants, like, here's what we found. We had 3 studies that documented all this stuff. And our proposal was, let's spread out, let's do 3 press conferences about 2 weeks apart. And I still remember it was the World Vision representative. He's like, no, that's a really good idea, but after the first press conference, we're probably going to get death threats, and we're not going to do any more press conferences. So let's have 1 press conference, and let's just throw it all out there. And then it'll be too late to be scared and not do the next one. So that was our decision. Strategically bad, but it seemed like smart just because we were scared. We weren't so scared, but a lot of the other people in the room were. So we did. We did 1 press conference, and we just threw all this information out. And everybody hunkered down. We were ready for people to show up at our house, to get threatening phone calls. Nothing. The teachers' union, who we were most afraid of, made a public statement and said, we will never defend corrupt teachers. That was their statement. And I think it was God, and that God was preparing things. I think it was because it was the Protestant church, the Catholic church, ASJ-US, World Vision, etc. All of them have lots. You couldn't attack the messenger. And we had documented this so well. We had names, we had dates, we had places. The message was so. The only thing they ended up doing was, we will not defend corrupt teachers. So that was cool. And we started like, all right, we got even braver, like, okay, more studies, more press conference. We started developing proposals. How do we fix this? How do we get it up to 200 days? How do we make sure that teachers aren't renting out their spots? How do we clean up the corruption in the hiring process? How do we get textbooks in the classes? And we had lots of studies. We had lots of proposals. And over the last 2 years, I could mention small successes. 9 months ago, the president, in part from our urging, fired the minister of education. He hired a new minister of education, and this guy is fabulous. And when I say fabulous, I mean fabulous. He has implemented nearly every proposal we have suggested and gone far beyond. Let me just tell you about one. So we put up a website. He took all of the stuff off of our website and made an even better website. A couple things he's doing. Well, I'll just go right to the website. He's done a bunch of cool stuff. I'll tell you more if you ask me any questions. Just tell me about the website. This website is doing 3 things. Brilliant. First of all, before the school year could start, every student in every school had to be registered on this website. So even in the most rural schools, the teachers had to write down the list of students and go to an internet cafe, which there's still lots of in Honduras, and put all the kids in. And it had to be their name, their social security number, their parents' name, and their parents' social security number. And if the kids weren't registered, the government was not going to give a fund that they give each of the schools, so it relied on money. And in the end, they said it's going to help us figure out where to assign teachers. So that was a big enough deal that every kid in the country is now in the system. 2 weeks it took to register all the kids. Second thing it does, every teacher in the country had to register on this webpage. And they had to put in their name and their social security number, etc. They had to scan their diplomas and put them up on the website. So if I have a degree in math, I have to scan that, and then I fill out the little box and it says bachelor's in math. And then they had to fill out how many teaching jobs they have. And by law, you can only have 3. You can have a morning shift, an afternoon shift, and a weekend shift. Although there's a night shift, but most teachers should only have 2, but there's certain special circumstances they can have 3. If they have more than 3 jobs, the system kicks them out. It cross-checks if they have a math degree and they say they're teaching Spanish, it kicks them out of the system. If the school that they teach in the morning and the afternoon are more than a 20-minute bus ride, it kicks them out of the system. It has Google Maps connected right into the program. So it says, what's the travel distance between these 2 schools? If it's more than 20, if you can't make it, they found ones that are 6 hours apart. He's got a morning class and an afternoon class, 6 hours. He rent out that position, right? The system kicks them out. So it's how many jobs, if they have any at the same time, driving distance, and it matches their diplomas and their documents. And so the union said, this is illegal. And he said, no, it's voluntary. It's voluntary, but if you want to get your pay raise in March, you have to fill it out. So in March, as the new school year starts, there's a small raise for everybody. And so he's got 54 of the 60,000 teachers are already registered. By the end of the month, they have to all be in. He's already got 54,000. He's only got 6,000 left. And about 20% are being kicked out of the system. All that means is they have to go to the ministry office and explain why they have a math degree and they're teaching Spanish, or how they get from school A to school B. And if they can demonstrate that, no, it's all above board, okay, fine, shh, and you get. But if they can't, they're going to have to quit one of the jobs or 2 of the jobs or more of those positions. And the last thing this webpage is doing is it's now registering all teachers who don't have jobs. He's got 15,000 teachers who've already scanned their diplomas. He's told them what areas of the country they're willing to work, what grades they're willing to teach. He's got a whole pool already for all of these teachers that get kicked out. He said within 2 weeks, I can have new teachers in any one of these schools in the whole country. Does that all make sense? I think we should applaud for that. So it's basically taking a bunch of our suggestions, a whole bunch of different ones, and figuring out how to use technology and just mushing that all together in a nice, so smart little package. You can see I'm thrilled. He has said that all union leaders have to teach at least half a day, which is 1 full period. So it used to be if you were a union leader, you would get paid for teaching, but you could just work in the union. Now all union leaders have to be teaching. He has set up a calendar which will give 210 days of school instead of 200. And they're buying all new textbooks for the whole school. By the end of the month, every kid in the Honduran school system will have Spanish books. Middle of March, there'll be math. We're meeting with this guy sometimes weekly, for sure every 2 weeks. And last week he came into the AJS office, showed us this new website, and he said, or 2 weeks ago now, I want AJS to be the watchdog. I want you guys to be the ones that can give sort of the seal of approval that this website is being run accurately, that we're not firing teachers because they're of this party, or we're not taking reprisals against union leaders. We're treating everybody the same. Like, oh, of course we will, Mr. Minister. What more would you like us to do? Very exciting. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about health and security, but Jill said no. Just talk about education, and then people can ask questions about all the rest. So, just so you know. In conclusion, as you can see, Honduras as a country is in very bad shape. AJS is in very good shape. Here's a picture of our 15th anniversary. We decided to do it up big. and we rented a hotel a ballroom, and this is the German ambassador, this is the head of the World Bank, this is the vice president of Honduras, this is the US ambassador, that's the Irish ambassador, that's the president of the National Association of Protestants. All of them at our anniversary event, all of them speaking, and I mean, it was a little embarrassing how they went on and on about how ASJ-US was the NGO in Honduras who was really changing things, and more stuff like that. So while the country is suffering, ASJ-US is flourishing. It's on the front lines of trying to fix things. What's hard and sad and depressing is it often feels like corruption and violence is growing faster than our efforts to stop them. So I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank you all for your part in making this happen, for your prayers, for your donations. We need more of both, but I think we especially need more prayers. We need more prayers for Honduras. We need more prayers for ASJ-US. It was actually helpful for me to, and our staff often says this, sometimes Jill or others say, we've had so many visitors this month, is the ASJ-US staff getting tired of it? And I asked them a few weeks ago, and they said, it's those moments where you stop and give a presentation that you kind of take a step back and reflect on how far have we come. And looking at what has happened in education, and it took 3 years from that first investigation and that first press conference, and it took getting a new minister of education. And I'm really depressed and frustrated and on the edge of despair the last few weeks with the whole security situation. And we've done the investigations, and we've made the proposals, and we've made the press conferences, and it just feels like it's not doing anything. And when I looked at it, I was like, well, yeah, education took 3 years. We had to expect that this whole security thing is going to get fixed. And we're up against drug traffickers with millions of dollars. We're up against organized crime and corruption. To expect that that's just going to roll over and play dead in a year is just stupid, right? So I think putting this presentation has helped me be a little more hopeful too. That even though we're not seeing the results yet in the security issue, that we're on the edge. No, maybe not even on the edge. But we're in the right place. And now we just need to keep working and patient. So, pray more. And in June, I will be back doing a full celebration presentation about all the stuff that's going on. I would love to see you. I know Jill would love to see some of you sponsoring tables. So if any of you are interested, you can talk to Jill about that. And if any of you want to come down between now and June, we'd be happy to have you. But I think that's what I wanted to say tonight, and see if some of you have questions about something I did talk about or even something I didn't.